Get out. You disgust me. The man's voice echoed through the street as rain poured from the sky. She stood there, soaked and shivering, clutching nothing but her pride. But, you promised to love me no matter what, she whispered, her voice breaking. He scoffed. That was before you turned into this. Look at you. Fat, sloppy, embarrassing. You're not the woman I married. And just like that, he slammed the door, unaware that his best friend, watching from across the street, had just witnessed everything, and would soon pick up what he so cruelly threw away. Before we continue, subscribe for more unforgettable stories like this. Like, share, and now, let's dive into today's tale. The woman he threw into the rain. I may not have everything, Grace whispered as she placed the steaming bowl on the table, but I'll always give you my best. Michael didn't even look up from his phone. Did you salt the stew this time, or are we playing guess the flavor again? She forced a smile. I followed the recipe you liked. He didn't respond. Just scrolled, tapped, scrolled again. They lived in a modest two-bedroom flat in a quiet neighborhood. Not rich, not poor. Their furniture was simple, their clothes practical, their dreams slowly drifting apart. But Grace still tried. Every day, she had gained weight in the last 2 years. A slow change, brought on by stress, hormones, and life itself. But her heart? That never changed. She still woke early to iron his shirts. Still packed his lunch with love notes tucked between the napkins. Still waited up every night, just to hear how his day went. Even if he didn't ask about hers. She believed in him, more than he ever believed in her. They used to laugh together, dream aloud, dance in the kitchen. Now, Michael barely made eye contact. He came home late, left early, and mumbled more than he spoke. Still, Grace held on, because he had once looked into her eyes and said, "No matter what happens, I will love you." Unconditionally. She believed those words. Until the night he would weaponize them, and leave her standing alone in the rain. It began with side comments. I saw what Jessica posted today. She's had 2 kids, and still looks like a model. Grace glanced up from the dishes. She also has a full-time chef and a personal trainer, Michael. Michael shrugged. Still, she puts in effort. Then it was the hesitation before holding her hand in public. The way his eyes lingered on other women at the grocery store. The photos he liked on social media. The silence when she changed clothes and stood waiting, hoping for a compliment that never came. One evening, she wore a red dress, the one he used to call his favorite. Her hair was styled, her lips painted softly. She had even skipped lunch all week just to feel lighter in it. Michael barely looked up. "You're wearing that," he said flatly. "Red's a bold color for your shape." Her heart sank like a stone. "I just wanted to look nice for dinner." He pulled on his jacket. "Maybe wear black next time. Slims you down." She didn't cry. Not then. She just nodded, sat down quietly, and watched him leave for dinner, alone. Later that night, she prepared his favorite dessert, banana bread with cinnamon glaze. When he returned, she met him at the door with a hopeful smile. "I thought we could talk," she said gently. Michael rolled his eyes. "Talk about what, Grace?" "About how you've given up. Look at yourself. You used to be pretty. Now you just exist." Grace's voice trembled. "You promised to love me. Through everything. You said. That was before you let yourself go," he snapped. "I don't want a woman who looks tired all the time. Who's soft and heavy and doesn't care." "But I do care," she cried. "I cook. I clean. I support you. I've done everything but lose myself trying to keep this together." He shook his head and walked past her. "You're not the woman I married, Grace." And in that moment, she realized something. He didn't miss the woman she used to be. He missed having someone he could shame and still keep. But Grace still wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. The storm rolled in without warning. Thunder cracked in the distance as rain lashed against the windows. But inside the house, it was Grace's heart that was breaking. Michael had come home angry, snapping about a delayed package, traffic, and a client who called him tired-looking. But none of those were the real reason. "You're the reason I feel stuck," he finally shouted, throwing his keys onto the counter. "Every day I come home to the same woman who doesn't even try anymore." Grace stepped forward, her voice small. "I've been trying. You just don't see it anymore." He laughed, bitter, sharp. "Trying? You call this trying? Look at you, Grace. You're fat, lazy. You've let yourself go, and now I'm the one paying for it." She blinked, stunned. "Fat? Yes, fat. Unattractive. And not what I signed up for." His words hit harder than any slap ever could. But you said, her voice cracked. You said you'd love me unconditionally. That was before I realized what unconditional meant. I'm not your babysitter, Grace. I'm your husband, and I don't want to be married to someone who can't respect herself enough to stay in shape. Tears gathered in her eyes. So what now? He pointed at the door. You're leaving. You're kicking me out? She whispered. In the middle of a storm? I don't care if it's raining, he spat. Maybe a little thunder will wake you up to the reality of who you've become. He grabbed her small suitcase, the one she used for weekend trips, and tossed it at her feet. Take your things. Go. Grace didn't speak. She didn't scream or fight or beg. She just stood there as he opened the door, letting the rain spill in like cold judgment. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the suitcase, her blouse already soaked through. And then, just before she stepped outside, she turned. I hope one day, you look in the mirror and realize what you truly lost. He scoffed. I didn't lose anything worth keeping. The door slammed shut behind her. But across the street, someone had been watching. And unlike the man who threw her out, he saw her. The rain hadn't stopped. Grace stood under the dim streetlight, her suitcase beside her, soaked down to her skin. Her blouse clung to her body. Her shoes made squishing sounds with every trembling step. But she kept walking, not knowing where she was going. Only that she couldn't go back. Cars passed. No one stopped. Until one did. A black sedan pulled over slowly, the window rolling down with a soft hum. A familiar voice called out. Grace. She froze. It was Daniel, Michael's closest friend. His old college roommate. The one who used to visit often in the early days of the marriage. Kind, quiet, observant. Now, he was staring at her in disbelief. What are you doing out here? In the rain? Dressed like that? He asked, stepping out of the car with his jacket already coming off. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Daniel gently placed the jacket over her shoulders. Get in the car. I have nowhere to go, she murmured. Then you'll come with me, he said without hesitation. Inside the car, the heater roared to life. Her teeth chattered. Her fingers trembled around the fabric of the jacket. Daniel didn't ask questions right away. He just drove. Calm. Focused. He took her to his apartment. Clean, warm, quiet. He brought her a towel, fresh clothes from his sister's spare set, and a cup of hot tea. Only when she was seated, wrapped in a blanket, did he speak again. Michael did this, he asked softly. Grace looked away. Her voice cracked. He said I was too fat. Not his type anymore. Daniel clenched his jaw. That's not just cruel. That's cowardice. She blinked back tears. I gave him everything, Daniel. I stayed when we had nothing. I believed in him. And now I'm nothing. He knelt in front of her. You're not nothing, Grace. You're exhausted. Hurt. Betrayed. But nothing. He shook his head. That's never who you were. She tried to smile, but it broke into another sob. And for the first time in a long time, someone reached for her not with judgment, but with genuine care. You can stay here as long as you need, Daniel said firmly. No pressure. No expectations. Just rest. Grace closed her eyes, her heart finally slowing. Because in a world that had just thrown her away, someone had chosen to bring her in. The next morning, Grace woke to the smell of scrambled eggs and fresh toast. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The room was unfamiliar, the bed too soft, the silence too kind. Then she sat up, and the weight of everything came rushing back. Her marriage, the storm, the door slammed in her face. She slowly walked into the kitchen, wearing the soft cotton robe Daniel had left for her. He stood at the stove, humming to himself, dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans. Good morning, he said, turning around with a gentle smile. You hungry? Grace hesitated. I don't want to be a burden. Daniel shook his head. Grace, you're not a burden. You're a guest. And guests eat. He pulled out a chair for her. She sat, still unsure if it was okay to feel cared for. I can help clean or do something to repay you, she added. You don't owe me anything, he said sincerely. You just need space to breathe. They ate quietly, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward, just peaceful. Over the next few days, Daniel made it a point to treat her like more than a broken woman. He didn't tiptoe around her pain, but he didn't define her by it either. When she offered to cook, he let her. When she cried mid-sentence, he listened. When she asked if she looked tired, he didn't lie, but he didn't insult her either. You look like someone who's been through hell, and still has the strength to offer someone a cup of tea, he once said. That's a good kind of strong. He never brought up Michael unless she did. And when she finally did, one quiet evening as they sat on the balcony watching rain clouds gather again, she said, I thought he loved me. But maybe he just loved having someone to control. Daniel didn't interrupt. He just nodded slowly and said, The problem wasn't your body, Grace. It was his ego. He needed someone smaller so he could feel bigger. Her eyes watered. Why didn't I see it? Because real love blinds us to cruelty, especially when we're the ones offering it. Grace let out a soft, bitter laugh. That's terrifyingly true. Daniel looked at her then, not the way Michael used to, scanning for flaws, but with something else. Respect. Admiration. Quiet awe. You're going to be okay, he said. And not because someone saves you, because you're already saving yourself. And for the first time in days, Grace believed it might be true. It began with a walk. Just a 15-minute stroll around the block, early in the morning, when the streets were quiet and the air was crisp. Daniel didn't push her. He simply asked, Want to get some sunlight? Grace hesitated, then nodded. Her feet were unsure at first. Her pace slow. But something about being outside again, breathing, moving, made her feel present. From there, it became a routine. Morning walks turned into evening stretches. Junk food was replaced with fresh meals they prepared together. Grace began drinking more water, taking longer showers, sleeping better. And somewhere in between those habits, her mind began to heal. She no longer checked her phone waiting for a message from Michael. She stopped blaming herself for his cruelty. She started journaling again, something she hadn't done since her college days. Her entries began as tears on paper, but gradually turned into reflections, gratitude, and goals. Daniel noticed the changes, but never pointed them out. He didn't make it about her body. He didn't celebrate every pound lost like it was a miracle. What he celebrated instead was her joy. You smiled today without forcing it, he'd say. Or, you walked 5 blocks without stopping to catch your breath. And once, you laughed with your whole face. I missed that. Grace would blush and brush him off. But deep down, she was beginning to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Worthy. One evening, after a long day, she stood in front of Daniel's hallway mirror, the full-length one near the coat rack. She turned sideways, pulled back her shoulders, and studied her reflection. Her curves were still there, but now, so was her posture. Her skin glowed. Her eyes looked rested. And for the first time in years, she didn't look away. Daniel passed behind her, pausing briefly. She's in there, he said softly. Grace turned. Who? The version of you the world tried to erase. She's back. She smiled, genuinely, and whispered, She's just getting started. That night, as she sat by the window sipping tea, a strange peace settled over her. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew this. She was no longer the woman left in the rain. She was the woman who had been found, and was now rediscovering herself. The first time Grace jogged a full mile without stopping, she cried. Not because she was tired, but because for once, her body didn't feel like her enemy. It felt like a companion. A vessel she was learning to love again, not punish or shrink out of shame. Her mornings now began before sunrise. She'd tie her sneakers with focus, stretch on the small balcony, and run through the waking streets with her playlist humming in her ears. Her breath was controlled, her pace steady. She didn't care about speed or distance. She just ran to feel alive. Back at Daniel's, she would blend her own smoothies, banana, oats, almond butter, a splash of cinnamon. She even laughed when she messed up recipes. Food, once a source of guilt, had become fuel. The scale moved slowly. But that wasn't what changed. It was how she walked, back straight, chin up. It was how she dressed, fitted jeans instead of oversized sweatshirts. It was how she spoke, clearly, without apologizing for every opinion. Daniel watched it all quietly, offering nothing but small encouragements in space. He never commented on her waistline, but he did say things like, You look rested today. Your eyes are brighter. You walked into the room like you owned it. One afternoon, Grace signed up for a local dance fitness class. At first, she stood in the back, nervous. But by the 3rd week, she was in the front row, laughing, sweating, moving with a kind of joy that couldn't be taught. The instructor pulled her aside once. You've got energy, girl. You light up the floor. She beamed the whole way home. Even strangers noticed. A barista complimented her posture. A neighbor asked if she was a model. And when she posted a casual selfie online, something she hadn't done in over a year, the comments poured in. You're glowing. Is that really you? You look amazing, Grace. But the best part wasn't the outside noise. It was how she now responded to the quiet inside. The doubt, the scars, the voices that once whispered, "You're not enough." Now, she whispered back, "Watch me." Every mirror became less of a threat and more of a friend. She no longer turned off the lights before changing. She no longer flinched at reflections. She met her eyes and said, "You're still in there, and you're beautiful." The weight was leaving. But more importantly, so was the shame. Daniel wasn't blind. He noticed the changes, not just in Grace's body, but in the way she carried herself. She smiled more often now, laughed without holding back. Her steps had a rhythm, her voice a melody that didn't tremble with hesitation anymore. She wore bright colors, yellows, greens, coral, the kind of colors you only wear when you feel worthy of being seen. And Daniel saw her. One evening, they went grocery shopping together. Grace was wearing fitted jeans, a cropped blouse, and sneakers. Nothing fancy, but everything about her was alive. At the checkout counter, a man in line behind them gave her a second look, then a third. Grace didn't notice, but Daniel did. He didn't say anything, just smiled quietly as she debated between almond milk and oat milk. Later that night, back at the apartment, Grace was unpacking the bags when Daniel said, "You know you turned heads at the store today, right?" She looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "That guy behind us." He couldn't stop staring. She laughed nervously. "Please." Maybe he thought I looked familiar. Daniel stepped closer. "Grace, I see you." She blinked. "What?" "I see how hard you've worked. How strong you've become. Not just physically. Your light, it's back. And it's blinding." Her breath caught in her throat. "No one ever told me that," she whispered. "Then the world's been too quiet," he said. "Because your glow isn't just about your curves or your waistline. It's in your confidence, your grace, your resilience." She smiled softly. "You always say the right things. I just say the truth." There was a pause. A warm, lingering pause. Then Grace turned away, cheeks flushed. "Thank you, Daniel. For everything." He didn't press her. He didn't make it romantic. He just nodded. But that night, as Grace sat on the balcony with her tea, staring at the stars, she whispered to herself, "He sees me." It wasn't just about feeling attractive. It was about being acknowledged, valued, for the soul beneath the skin, for the strength forged through storms, for the woman she had become, and the fire she had reclaimed. And as the wind brushed against her skin, Grace finally felt something she thought she had lost forever. Desired, respected, and slowly loved. The day started like any other. Quiet sunrise, fresh coffee, a new playlist humming in the background. Grace had just finished her morning workout. Her skin was dewy, her breath even. She wore a fitted black tank top and leggings that used to intimidate her, but now felt like armor. She wiped her forehead with a towel and stepped into the bathroom. And there it was, the full-length mirror. For months, it had been just another object in the room. Something she passed by quickly or avoided altogether. But today she stopped. No rush. No fear. She looked. Really looked. The reflection staring back was still her. Same brown eyes, same familiar features, but everything felt different. She noticed her waist, now slimmer. The gentle curve of her hips. The toned arms. The clearer skin. But what caught her attention the most was her posture. She was standing tall. Not sucking in her stomach. Not tilting her head to hide anything. Just standing there. Comfortable in her own skin. She tilted her head slightly, tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, and smiled. Slowly, genuinely. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Not from sadness, but from disbelief. It had been so long since she had seen herself like this. Not as a woman trying to become someone else, but as a woman who had come home to herself. She touched the mirror gently, as if greeting an old friend. "I missed you," she whispered. She didn't need anyone else in that moment. Not Michael's approval. Not the compliments from strangers. Not even Daniel's encouragement. Though his kindness had helped her find the courage. This smile? It was hers. Earned. Reclaimed. She walked out of the bathroom and into the living room, where Daniel was sipping coffee and reading the news. He looked up, noticing something different in her energy. "You're glowing again," he said. Grace laughed lightly. "I looked in the mirror today." "And?" he asked. "And I smiled," she said proudly. "Not because I'm thinner, but because I finally saw me. Daniel smiled, setting his mug down. Then today's a good day. She nodded. It's the best one yet. And deep inside, a quiet truth settled in her spirit. She was no longer trying to prove her worth to anyone. Not to the man who threw her into the rain, and not to the world that judged her silence. Grace was finally enough. For herself. And the mirror? It smiled right back. Michael was scrolling through Instagram on a slow afternoon when the shock hit him like a slap. There she was. Grace. At first, he didn't even recognize her. She was standing in front of a full-length mirror, dressed in a fitted emerald green dress that hugged her curves in all the right ways. Her hair was styled in soft waves, her waist visibly trimmed, her smile radiant. But it wasn't just the weight loss. It was the glow, the confidence. The woman in the photo looked like she had been reborn. Michael sat up straighter. His thumb hovered over the screen as he clicked on the photo, then the profile. Her name was still the same, Grace Ford, but the bio had changed. Healing. Becoming. Thriving. He scrolled further. Another post showed her jogging through a city trail, arms stretched high, sunlight catching her glowing skin. The caption read, "The body changes, but the heart remembers who it had to become to survive." Then a boomerang of her laughing with two other women at a rooftop brunch. She wore sunglasses and a cropped jacket, the kind of outfit she never had the confidence to wear when they were together. Michael blinked. Grace? This Grace? He clicked the comments. They were full of praise. You look amazing. Inspiration. Sis, you're glowing up. His heart began to pound. He exited the app, reopened it, went back to her page, as if hoping it had changed. But it hadn't. The woman who had once tiptoed around him in shame was now standing tall for the world to see, and being celebrated for it. He put his phone down and leaned back in his chair. Suddenly, the room felt smaller, colder, the silence less peaceful and more haunting. He walked to the mirror in his hallway, stared at his own reflection, the same one he never questioned when he threw her out. His jaw was tighter, his hairline receding slightly, his eyes tired. He looked nothing like the man who had broken her. And she looked nothing like the woman he thought would never rise. The worst part wasn't that she had changed. It was that she had changed without him, and clearly didn't need him anymore. For the first time since that rainy night, regret took root in his chest. And it was growing fast. Michael hadn't spoken to anyone from their shared circle in months. But now, curiosity burned in him like an itch he couldn't ignore. He needed to know how Grace had gone from broken to brilliant. And more importantly, who had helped her get there. He started with a message to Tasha, a friend from their old church group. Michael, hey, random question. Have you seen Grace lately? The reply came faster than expected. Tasha, you mean the Grace that's glowing like a sunrise? Yeah, everyone's seen her. He stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Then came another. Tasha, you might want to check the Women Rise Network event page. She spoke last month. Brought the whole room to tears. Michael blinked. Spoke. Grace? He tapped through the link Tasha sent. There she was again, standing behind a podium, poised, speaking with emotion and clarity. The title of her talk read, Becoming More Than What They Left Behind. A lump formed in his throat. Later that day, he ran into James, an old college buddy who used to join them for dinners. Michael kept it casual at first, but the question eventually slipped out. Hey, have you seen Grace recently? James raised a brow. You mean the Grace who leveled up? Michael forced a laugh. Guess she's been working on herself. James crossed his arms. She's not just working, man. She's thriving. Eating clean, working out, mentoring girls at the local center. And Daniel's been a big part of that too. Michael froze. Daniel? Yeah, your boy Daniel. The one who found her that night you. He stopped himself. Let's just say he's been solid. Gave her space, but never let her forget her worth. Michael's stomach turned. He hadn't even thought about Daniel. Hadn't realized they were still in contact. And now it sounded like they were close. Too close. I thought they were just friends, Michael muttered. James shrugged. Maybe not. But I'll say this, she looks at peace. Like someone who found her people after being lost in a storm. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing James's words over and over. She looks at peace. When was the last time Grace looked peaceful with him? When was the last time she laughed without checking his face for approval? Suddenly, the rain outside began to fall, soft at first, then harder. It reminded him of the night he shut the door on her, told her she was too much. Not enough. Nothing. Now the world saw her as everything he failed to recognize. And the man who picked her up might not be just a friend after all. The knock came just after sunset. Grace was lighting a candle in the living room, soft jazz playing in the background. She wasn't expecting anyone. Daniel was still at work, and most of her visitors called first. She opened the door slowly, and there he was, Michael, standing in the hallway, hair a little messy, eyes uncertain, hands fidgeting with the hem of his jacket. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he managed, "Hi." Grace raised an eyebrow. "Didn't expect to see you here." I needed to see you," he said quickly. "Just for a minute." She stepped aside reluctantly. "You have one." He entered, eyes scanning the room. Warm, peaceful, lived in. A diffuser glowed in the corner. A folded yoga mat sat neatly by the window. It felt nothing like the woman he remembered. Or rather, it felt like the version of her he never gave the space to become. "You look incredible," he said. "Thank you," Grace replied, crossing her arms. Michael cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about us. About everything. I made a mistake, Grace. A horrible one." She stared at him, unreadable. "I was angry, insecure. I blamed you when I should have been holding you. I was blind to your loyalty, your love. And I let the best thing in my life walk out the door." Grace let out a slow breath. "No, you threw the best thing in your life out the door. In the rain." He winced. "I didn't come to fight," he said. "I came to ask for a second chance." She blinked, stunned. "A second chance? I see you now. Everything you are. Everything I missed. I was wrong. About all of it. And I just need one chance to make it right." Grace stared at him, not with anger, but with clarity. She walked over to the table, picked up a framed photo of herself laughing during a hike, and held it out. "You see her?" she asked. Michael nodded. "That's who I've become. And the only reason I became her," she paused, placing the frame down, "was because you left me." He looked desperate now. "But we can start over. I can be better." Before he could finish, another voice came from behind her. "Grace? Everything okay?" Michael's head snapped up. Daniel stepped out from the hallway, casual in a t-shirt, a book still in his hand. He looked between them, instantly understanding everything. Grace turned slightly, her voice calm. "It's okay. He was just leaving." Daniel nodded once, then stood beside her, not possessive, just present. Michael stared at the two of them. The room, her glow, their ease. And for the first time, he saw the full picture. Not just what he had lost, but what another man had the wisdom to hold on to. He swallowed hard, voice low. "I see." Grace gave a soft smile. "I hope you never forget it." And this time, she closed the door. Daniel hadn't planned to interrupt. When he heard the knock, he stayed in the hallway, giving Grace the space to decide how she wanted to handle it. But the moment he heard Michael's voice, familiar, calculating, soaked in regret, something in him shifted. He had seen Grace rebuild herself from rubble. He had watched her cry in silence, sweat through early morning workouts, read books about healing, and write affirmations on sticky notes when no one was watching. She had fought for her worth with bare hands and bruised hope. And now, the man who shattered her wanted to stroll back in? Not this time. So when Michael said, "I just need one chance to make it right," Daniel stepped forward. "Grace? Everything okay?" Her eyes met his, calm, clear, and in that glance, he saw her strength. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't shrinking. But she didn't need to answer, because Daniel was already moving forward. Michael stiffened the moment he saw him. "Daniel." Daniel didn't offer a handshake. "Michael." A tense silence settled in the room. "I didn't know you were here," Michael said, eyeing him. Daniel nodded. "That's because you stopped checking in the day you threw her out into the rain like she was trash." Michael flinched. "I made a mistake. I've already said that. And I've seen what that mistake cost her," Daniel said sharply. "I saw her when she couldn't sleep through the night. When she couldn't look in a mirror. When she blamed herself for your cruelty." Michael swallowed hard. "I didn't come here to argue." "No," Daniel said. "You came here thinking you still had a place in her story." He stepped closer, not threatening, just unwavering. "But let me tell you something, Michael. The woman you threw away, she didn't just get better. She became someone you never had the capacity to honor. And while you were busy scrolling through fake perfection online, I was helping her see the real beauty in herself." Michael's jaw clenched. "So what now? You two are." Daniel didn't gloat. He didn't smirk. He just said, "I didn't steal her. I picked up what you were too blind to recognize. Grace stood behind them, not needing to intervene. This wasn't a fight. This was clarity. Michael looked at her, his voice breaking. I really lost you, didn't I? Grace nodded. You lost me the moment you opened that door and closed it behind me. And Daniel? He simply took her hand in his, not to show ownership, but to show the difference between holding on and holding dear. Michael stood frozen at the door, his mouth half open, words catching in his throat. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calm was the kind that came from knowing the truth and not needing permission to speak it. You know what the real tragedy is, Michael? Daniel asked. It's not that you lost her. It's that you never really saw her in the first place. Michael looked away. You think I don't know that? Daniel stepped forward, firm but steady. I don't think I know. I watched this woman love you with everything she had. She gave until she had nothing left for herself. And what did you do? You broke her spirit, then blamed her for bleeding. Michael's fists clenched at his sides. You don't know what it was like. I know exactly what it was like, Daniel cut in. I know what it was like to see her show up every day for someone who treated her like a burden. I know what it was like to watch her try to shrink herself, literally and emotionally, just to be enough for a man who never intended to cherish her. He gestured toward Grace, who stood behind him, her chin lifted, her presence undeniable. She's not who she used to be, and that's not because of me. It's because she finally gave herself permission to bloom where you buried her. Michael's face twisted. So you're the hero now? No, Daniel replied. I'm just the man who knew what I was looking at when she showed up in the rain. I didn't see weight. I didn't see shame. I saw a woman whose heart was still beating after everything life, and you, had done to her. He paused, his voice softening. She didn't need rescuing. She needed respect. And while you were measuring her value with a scale, I was listening to her dreams, watching her rise, standing beside her as she found her way back to herself. Michael looked at Grace again. This time, there was no arrogance in his eyes, just sorrow. I didn't know, he said quietly. Daniel nodded. You didn't care to know. The silence that followed was heavy, not awkward, not violent, just final. Grace stepped beside Daniel, her hand still in his. I don't hate you, Michael, but I've healed too much to ever go back. Michael gave a slow nod, his shoulders sagging. He looked around the room one last time, not searching for anything, but realizing what he had once had, and how completely it was gone. Then he turned, stepped out the door, and walked into the hallway without looking back. Daniel closed the door softly. He didn't speak right away. Neither did Grace. But when she turned to him, her eyes filled with quiet strength, he simply said, Whatever comes next, we walk it together. And this time, Grace didn't cry. She smiled. Michael didn't look back. His footsteps echoed down the hallway, slow, heavy, defeated. The man who once held Grace's heart with pride now walked away carrying only the weight of his regret. He had come expecting to reclaim what he had thrown away. Instead, he was reminded, powerfully, that some losses are permanent. Grace closed the door gently, locking it with quiet finality. She leaned against it for a moment, not out of sadness, but release. A chapter had closed, and for the first time in a long time, there was no pain in letting it go. Daniel stepped beside her, hands tucked into his pockets. You okay? She turned to him, her voice soft. I think. I've never been more okay. They moved to the couch, side by side, the silence between them rich with understanding. The rain had started again outside, tapping lightly against the windows, like a reminder of how far she'd come. Grace looked over at Daniel. You didn't have to speak for me, you know. I know, he said. You're more than capable. Then why did you? He smiled. Because I needed him to hear it. Not just from you, but from someone who saw your worth the moment you were left standing in the rain. She held his gaze for a moment longer, then reached over, resting her hand on his. I used to think I had to become smaller to be loved, she said. But you made space for all of me. Daniel didn't say anything. He just squeezed her hand, and in that gesture was a promise. No conditions. No shame. No expectations. Just love. The kind that grows from presence, not pressure. The kind that holds space instead of holding control. Grace stood and walked to the mirror near the hallway. The same mirror she once feared. She looked into it and saw a woman fully present. No apologies in her eyes. No doubt in her stance. Then she turned back to Daniel. Want to go dancing this weekend? He raised an eyebrow, amused. Dancing? I've never done it in public before. I used to think people would stare at me. He grinned. Let them stare. She smiled wide. Let them. As the evening faded into night, they sat on the balcony under a blanket, warm drinks in hand, legs touching. And Grace leaned into Daniel's shoulder, her eyes closed, peace settling over her like a soft blanket. She wasn't the woman Michael had walked away from. She was the woman who had finally walked toward herself. And in the arms of the man who picked her up, she had finally found home. The apartment was smaller now. A one-bedroom unit with peeling paint and a window that barely opened. No soft jazz in the background. No smell of home-cooked meals. Just silence, thick and unforgiving. Michael sat on the edge of his bed, hunched over his phone. The glow from the screen lit up his tired face, the lines around his eyes deeper than before. He was scrolling. Photo after photo. Grace at a beach with friends, her hair dancing in the wind. Grace speaking on a podcast, her smile bright and voice confident. Grace standing beside Daniel, hand in hand, both looking like peace finally had a shape. He stopped on one picture. It was her in a red dress. The same color he once mocked her for wearing. But now, it fit her like power itself. She wasn't hiding in the photo. She was centered, glowing, unbothered. Michael stared at the image like it might blink. His thumb hovered over the screen. Then slowly, he locked the phone and tossed it onto the table. Too late. There were no doors left to knock on. No apologies that could rewind time. He once had a woman who would have walked through fire for him. And when she needed shelter, he threw her to the storm. Now the only thing left was her echo. And the bitter taste of a love he was never man enough to hold. Once upon a rainy night, a man threw away a woman not because she was broken, but because he couldn't see her strength through his own weakness. He wanted beauty that turned heads, but she carried the kind that healed hearts. And while he stood at the door shouting her flaws into the storm, another man, quieter, wiser, opened his arms and saw her for who she truly was. Not a burden, not a backup plan, but a builder. She didn't beg. She didn't chase. She simply rose. And when she did, she didn't just glow. She shined so brightly that the man who once shamed her could only watch from the shadows of his regret. Because some men break what they should have protected, and others rebuild what they never expected to love. So if you ever meet someone who holds you gently when you're soft, who sees your worth before the world does, who stands by your side, not just when you're glowing, but when you're growing, don't throw that kind of love away. Because when you do, the rain may wash them from your doorstep, but someone better may find them in the storm. Love the heart, not the weight. Respect the soul, not just the shape. Share this story with someone who needs to remember what real love looks like. And if you've ever been Grace, don't dim your light. The right ones will never ask you to.